Hey there, it's Rachel Mullins, the host of Hashtag No Filter Fridays on Public House Media.
The latest headlines.
The Houston Astros, the defending World Series champions, got better adding Garrett Cole.
The insightful interviews.
Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible. With how much emphasis is put on the position, yet how many over the last couple of years we've had questions. Why do we put such an emphasis on drafting a quarterback number one overall?
The bottom line is there's not enough good quarterbacks to go around. And I think with the new CBA, it's really a low-risk gamble now. If you look at the playoff teams, the common denominator, good quarterback play.
The hottest takes.
I think the guy to blame is the one guy who hasn't left yet. I think Russell Westbrook is one of the bigger problems in Oklahoma City.
Can all be found on Press Row.
Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network.
Here's your host.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Christian Heimel.
Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, on Press Row here this Thursday, October 31st, Halloween here on the show, and we are excited to have you guys a part of us broadcasting, as always, part of the Public House Media Network. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook. Just search Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. Plenty of stuff to get to. We're going to get to your listener questions in just a little bit. But we're going to focus mainly today's show on an issue that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and that is the idea of the NCAA allowing athletes to get paid for their image, likeness, and all of that. We're going to talk with Chris Williams, smooth member of collegiate basketball team in the early 90s, the Manhattan College Jaspers, went to the NCAA tournament, went to the NIT as well. We'll talk to him and kind of preview college basketball season a little bit here, but also dive in just briefly into what he thinks this means, his reaction to it as a former player at the Division I level, especially in New York City, the media capital of the world, and where he could have had these wonderful opportunities to be able to maybe get some endorsement deals when he was in college. So we'll talk to him about it, but I want to really dive in because we touched on this on the show a couple of weeks ago with regards to the NCAA and how it could really impact things in the state of California, obviously passing the law that will prohibit schools from punishing players who get paid for their likenesses, names, and images. Now, here's what's happened, just so that everybody knows. This week on Tuesday, the NCAA voted unanimously to begin the process of modifying rules to allow collegiate athletes to profit from their names, images, and likenesses, quote, in a manner consistent with the collegiate model. What does that mean? Who knows in any way, shape, or form? But it's going to take a while still. This solves literally nothing. All this does is the NCAA is now telling people that work for the NCAA and their three separate divisions to, hey, figure this out. Let's see how we can make this happen. You now have permission to start talking about this to potentially find a solution to it. Oh, by the way, we want it kind of done and implemented by January 2021. So we're giving you essentially 14 months to figure this out so we can get it rolling and get it going. Now, what it all means, how it's all going to look, we have no idea whatsoever. There are people who are for this, there are people who are against it, but let me tell you right now what this does, and that is nothing. It literally solves nothing because there's going to be so many changes to this. There's going to be so much of a ripple effect throughout sports, not just at the collegiate level, but up to the pros and down all the way through to youth, AAU, Little League, whatever it is. Because here's the problem. The NCAA and this whole debate over name, image, and likeness stems from two sports, college football and college men's basketball. It's college football and it's March Madness. Those are the two driving forces behind this because nothing against any other athlete at the collegiate level. Baseball players aren't making money for their school. Softball players, lacrosse players, gymnasts, swimmers, tennis players, golfers, they're not making money for their school and therefore aren't going to be ones that end up with these kind of endorsement deals. What this allows, the NCAA has said, is that now what you can basically do is instead of us paying you to come and be a student athlete with us, we're going to let you go out, act as your own agent, act as your own marketing firm, and try to get endorsement deals. If you do and you get paid for your likeness, that's great. You can have that kind of money. Now, I guarantee you, they're going to figure out something with regards to taxation. They're going to figure out something that says you have to stay a certain amount of time in college or you have to maintain a certain number of course credits in order to keep any of that. Like, for instance, I don't know how many of you listen to the show when you went to college, if you had a scholarship or a work-study allotment that you were allowed to get paid. I did. When I was in college, I had $3,000 a semester I was allowed to earn via work-study. I had to keep a minimum of 9 credits, though, to be able to do that. I could easily see the NCAA doing something similar to that and telling all of these players there's a cap you're allowed to earn per semester, number one, but you also have to meet a minimum credit hours and maintain good standing in those credits. Is that wrong? I don't think so personally, because you're basically becoming an employer and setting across guidelines as to which you're allowed to make that money like any employer does. What I do see having an issue and where I do see the problem is, again, this opens up Pandora's box because not every single athlete is created equal. The UCLA gymnasts are tremendous. They are such a talented gymnastics team. Penn State women's volleyball, incredibly talented. LSU baseball, incredibly talented. But those guys aren't making a ton of money for their schools. What this is going to do, and the way these schools are going to get around actually having to pay them, all those posters that you see, those game day programs, those banners, any advertising that is done by the school that uses their players, guess what? They're going to find their way around this, and they're going to go and not use the players anymore. You're going to see coaches plastered all over the place. No offense to Zion Williamson or R.J. Barrett or Trey Jones or any of these guys at Duke who are going to have their banners put up all over the place and in newspapers and in game day programs and magazines and flyers all across campus. But guess what? Coach K's face is going to be all over the place because now the school doesn't have to pay the player in order to use that. That's the way they get around this. So schools are always going to find a way not to pay the player. This opens up much more problems. This opens up much more discussion, which is a good thing. But again, it creates so much more potential red tape, so many more caution flags going up, so much more that these players are going to have to do now from a legal process in order to get paid. And how many of them are going to get paid? Very, very few. Mainly men's basketball players and college football players. Those are the two. That's the driving force behind this. Don't get me wrong. If there's a women's volleyball player or soccer player, or if there's a male swimmer or a male gymnast that is able to go and get a sponsorship deal, that is awesome. That is a great job by you marketing yourself or having someone, potentially an agent or a marketing coordinator that is able to help you do that. But do not expect that all of a sudden the floodgates are going to open and the money is going to come back, because guess what? And trust me, I'm one of those people that as soon as I saw this, I'm like, yes, let's bring back NCAA football, the video game. It was the best video game of all time. Guess what? Now you're going to have to sign away your image and likeness, and you're going to have to figure out a percentage. And guess what, offensive lineman? You're sure as hell not going to make as much money as Tua Tagovailoa. I don't care if you're the number 1 draft pick. I don't care if you're a linebacker who's going to go in the top 3. Joe Burrow is going to make more money than you because he's a quarterback, and he's probably going to end up on the cover. That's the difference. Or EA Sports is going to turn right around and say, hey, you know what? Let's throw Nick Saban on the cover instead of putting Jalen Hurts or whatever it might be. They're going to find ways around this, and players student athletes are still going to feel like they're getting screwed out of it. So no matter what you may think, no matter what your hopes are for this, it is not going to fix this whole thing. Does it help the people at the top, the ones that are really making the money and really getting all the TV deals? Yes, but it's not going to help everybody else. It's not going to be a equal thing, and that's going to continuously be an issue, potentially even a Title IX issue at some point if schools aren't allowing enough female athletes to male athletes, whatever it is. There's so many more issues that go into this that nobody's really thinking about. We'll follow this, obviously, and see how things progress over the next 14 months to see if anything actually is going to end up getting implemented in January 2021. The other thing, and I'll be real quick with this about it before we get to Chris Williams and talk about some college basketball here and actually on the court stuff. The bigger issue to this, and one of the problems that the NCAA basketball has had, is the endorsement deals and the money coming from shoe and apparel companies going to take care of players' families, and the basic pay-to-play scandal that has been all over college basketball the last couple of years. We've seen it take down Louisville. We've seen it take down Arizona, Kansas, all this other stuff. The problem now is if these collegiate athletes are allowed to go and figure out a way to get paid themselves and Adidas wants to go and sponsor a Zion Williamson, they can go right on ahead and do that. But what they're going to start doing is, because I'm sure a school, like for instance Duke is a Nike school, I'm sure they wouldn't let Zion Williamson sign a marketing deal with Adidas. But what these companies are going to do is they're going to go to the high school level, to the AAU level, and start buying these kids to be able to make this happen, especially since the one and done will be gone in a couple of years. For instance, this just happened on Tuesday of this week. Imani Bates, sophomore in high school at Ypsilanti Lincoln in Detroit, was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. 6'9". They're talking about him as the next Michael Jordan, the next Magic Johnson, the next LeBron James. He's on the cover of SI. Sound familiar? Yeah, LeBron, a guy who did not go to college and is making millions upon millions of dollars. I don't know if this is going to happen, but he's 15 years old, and I guarantee you someone has at least already had conversations with him about an endorsement deal for Nike or Adidas or New Balance or Puma. It's incredible. He's already committed to Duke, but they're talking about him reclassifying and maybe going to Michigan State. And who knows, by the time he graduates, there won't even be a one-and-done rule. He may go straight to the NBA. But that's my point, is the fact that now these Adidas companies, these apparel companies are going to go to these high school kids, and that's where the money's going to start going. And it's going to get dirtier, it's going to get slimier, it's going to get skeevier, and it's going to get more and more disturbing to watch now that the NCAA is going to let players figure themselves out and get paid in their own possible way. And I really am afraid of that. Will it happen? We don't know. But it's one of those things that if a 15-year-old kid is already on the cover of Sports Illustrated, you can't tell me there's not one single apparel executive or marketing executive somewhere going, you know what? Let's get this kid now. Let's give him $250,000 to get to be a spokesman for Gatorade or whatever it is. You can't tell me there's not one single marketing executive that's not thinking about that right now. And that's where the scary part comes in, because if the money's not going to the college athletes who are trying to get paid because now they're getting paid on their own, it's going to start going to the younger kids, because it's all about how do you make more money, how do you get more of a social media imprint, how do you get more media value out of it. Hell, there's a dude from Washington, D.C. who took a home run ball to the chest that generated $7 million in media value for Bud Light. What does Bud Light do? They fly him to Houston for Game 6 of the World Series. Where this money is, you will never know where it's going to go until it's too late and it's already been spent. And that's one of the real scary things, too, about this new revelation with the NCAA allowing players to get paid for their name, image, and likeness. When we come back, we're going to talk with Chris Williams about not only this, but actual basketball stuff. Who does he see in the Final Four? Some of his dark horses, some of the mid-major stuff, and his link to the defending national champion head coach Tony Bennett. It's coming up, as well as your listener questions. You're on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Want to be part of the show? Go to Facebook and search Press Row Podcast Public House Media. Or find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can also email the program, PressRowPHM@gmail.com.
Hi, this is Peggy Rojas, host of Viviendo una Vida en Balance here at Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you can come back and check my show, Viviendo una Vida en Balance, where we talk about life hacks to live a life in balance. And the show's in Spanish. A new show comes out every Monday, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and share with your friends. Again, thank you for checking out the following broadcast in Public House Media.
This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
With a little love and some tenderness, we'll walk
Welcome back on Press Row. Christian Heimel here with you, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network on this Thursday, this Halloween Thursday, October 31st here. And as always, we love talking, as you guys know listening to the show, we love talking college hoops, but we love talking it more when this next guy joins the show. He's a big friend of the podcast. He's your favorite. He's our favorite, Uncle Smooth. Chris Williams back on the show. Smooth, always good to talk to you, brother.
What's up, partner? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and let's kind of get into it a little bit. We're talking college basketball here, and the season just a little bit away. I want to get your thoughts on the NCAA's vote to allow athletes to profit, but we'll get to that in just a little bit because there's still a whole bunch being talked about in regards to the season coming up here in just a little bit. But first and foremost, the fact that Michigan State, the number one team in the preseason polls, followed by a couple of other blue bloods, obviously Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, and then Louisville in that top five there, and what Chris Mack has done in such a short period of time to turn things around for the Cardinals. But what are you looking at? What are you most excited for coming into this season?
Okay, coming into the season, you talked about the top-heavy teams. You know Michigan State's going to come in. They're always better near the latter part of the season. Coach Izzo gets those guys playing so well. But you look at a guy like Cassius Winston, who's a pro's pro at the point guard position. He's one of those guys who's made to play college basketball. He may not have a great pro career, but at the college basketball level, this guy knows how to win. So you know they'll be in the thick of things. A team you didn't mention was Florida. A lot of talent. They defend, and they have a young man who I really like a lot, Kerry Blackshear Jr. He's a senior. He's going to bring a lot to that team. Defensively, they really get after it, but the offensive end is something they have to improve in. So I think they'll be much better this season. Kansas will be right there also. Big Tom Biggs and Azubuike will be back playing well. Devin Johnson's a good guard. They won't be as fast as they have been in the past. I think because of their big, they'll slow the pace of the basketball game down. But two teams that I want to just bring up, again, you know they're always there, but I like Duke with Trey Jones. I think Trey did a really good job, a mature decision in staying for his sophomore season. Considering his boys went into the NBA, you see those guys being successful, probably with a lot in his ear, but understanding for him to be better, you need to stay one more year at the college level, get his offensive game a little bit better. So I think they'll be very good with his leadership. You have to like North Carolina. Roy Williams does a great job. Tremendous recruiting class. Cole Anthony, he is a pro, just treating us, allowing us to see him at the college level for 1 year, but this guy is ready to go.
You talk about... No, go ahead, go ahead.
No, when you think about all these teams, the one determining factor is you have a couple of guys, or at least one pro who's on that team who gets them to that next level, who say at one point or another in a game, he can take over and he's a game changer.
100%, and you and I have always talked about having not only that pro on the team, but having that leadership, that experience factor. And the team that had that last year, and it seemed like they had it all the way through, of course, the defending national champions in the Virginia Cavaliers, but a team that is preseason outside the top 10 at 11. They're going to have a rough time with obviously North Carolina and Duke in their conference, but what do you see out of Tony Bennett and the Cavaliers? Tony Bennett, who turned down a raise, by the way, this offseason, to be able to be there with Virginia and try to repeat in that very, very tough ACC.
Well, anytime you bring up Tony Bennett, I have to recognize that he played his last college basketball game at Draddy Gymnasium. Me and my boys had to take him down when he was at Wisconsin Green Bay. Phenomenal player. I think he only missed maybe 2 or 3 shots that evening. He tossed 40 on us. I believe, if I remember correctly, did we come out with a victory? But he does a tremendous job, a class act, turning down the raise. Who does that nowadays? Systematic team, his system is implemented, and those guys do a really good job of playing it through. I think they're a team who gets better as the season goes along. I don't see them being such a great team to start off the year. I think they'll have a tough time in that ACC, but I think they'll be much, much appreciated when the season closes out.
We're talking with Chris Williams here, the Manhattan Jasper Hall of Famer inducted earlier this year as well, along with his 1992 championship team in the MAC there. And we're always love having you on talking college basketball. But when you look at some of these teams, and we always talk about the Blue Bloods, and it seems as though every time we get to March Madness, we get to the NCAA tournament, we want to see a couple Cinderellas, maybe for the first weekend, and then we want them to get out and let the Blue Bloods really kind of take control again. However, they may not necessarily be a blue blood. They may not be a Cinderella either. A team that has always been fun to watch over the last couple of years has been a team very close to you right now in East Orange, New Jersey, and that is the Seton Hall Pirates. They've been so good in that league, especially battling with Villanova almost every single year. But when you look at Seton Hall this year and the talent they've had over the last couple of seasons, what do you make of them and maybe their ability to crack into that top 10 and make some noise maybe in March?
But again, when you think about Seton Hall, the one guy that jumps out at you is Miles Powell. This guy is a scoring machine. He might be the best catch-and-shoot guard in the country. Smaller guard, but he can score the basketball. Did a better job last season with his playmaking ability. I think if he wants to take that next step to the NBA level, he has to turn himself more into a point guard, but he can score the basketball at the college level, makes big shots, takes big shots. I look forward to seeing Seton Hall sticking around in this tournament, at least winning 1 or 2 games.
Especially when you look at the team, and they're going to really be interesting to see how they start off the year. Fortunately for them, it's not a huge thing, but Kevin Willard will be suspended for the first 2 games as the NCAA investigating something around Seton Hall there. But we talk about New York, and we talk about those that area being college basketball, I don't know if we call it royalty or whatever it is, but there's so much great talent and great programs at all levels in that New York City area, Seton Hall being one of them as well. And that's where a lot of these mid-majors come. Of course, the big one that a lot of people note from the New York City area is Iona in the MAC that you and I know very well from our time with Manhattan. But some of those other mid-majors around the country, of course, St. Mary's. Some may consider VCU in that mix as well. Davidson, of course, Marquette, and some of those others. But you look at some of these mid-majors, Smooth, and some of these guys that could maybe make some noise and really kind of upset some brackets come March. Who are you really excited to watch? Which leagues kind of really intrigue you?
Well, again, I have Iona on my list right here, Christian. Again, I know this team very well. They've been to the tournament the last 4 years in a row representing the MAC conference. Iona this season, I believe, brings as much talent as they've had in a long time. A.J. English, first teamer. Tawan Agee, first teamer. And when you get into that tournament, which they've been at, I think it's a familiarity type situation. And the 1 or 2 players you need to step up, I think Isaiah Washington is one of the guys you need to look for. He'll be playing his first season at Iona. Transfer from Minnesota. I think he's one of those guys who look at it and say, listen, we can't account for everyone, but who can have a big game in the NCAA tournament? And I think that's what they need to get over that hump.
Should be a really interesting to see what some of those teams do, especially that mid-major level. All right, Smooth, I want to get to this because it's been kind of the topic for the last couple of weeks. And you and I have even at points when we were doing play-by-play, when we were doing broadcasts together, would talk about this every now and again. But the NCAA, it seems, has cleared the way for players to profit and collegiate athletes to profit off their name, their image, and their likeness. It was on Tuesday. NCAA's top decision makers voted unanimously to start the process of modifying their rule to allow it, quote, in a manner consistent with the collegiate model. When you first heard the news as a former collegiate Division I athlete yourself, what was the first reaction?
Well, again, the first reaction was a smile on my face. Obviously, I think at this stage, we all understand that collegiate athletes need to be reimbursed for what they've done on the playing field or on the court. But you, as a pro as you are, wrote down and stated exactly what I put in my notes here, consistent with the collegiate model. Again, I think the wording is very tricky. It gives you the idea that right off the bat, players will be taken care of. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of a smokescreen because everything hasn't been taken care of fully, and the NCAA doesn't understand exactly how they want to be able to take care of this. But the wording is very tricky here, and it leaves a lot of things open. It's vague because you have to talk about recruiting, going from state to state. So all these laws have to be put into place, but everything hasn't been done just yet. So I think if anything were to be done thus far, it would be real small increments. And I watched Jay Billis a little bit earlier, and he broke it down as well as I heard anyone. It can't be done right away. because there's too many places and too many areas that need to be taken care of. But I believe everyone understands at this stage, athletes need to be compensated. There's too much money being thrown around at this stage. Well, it's been done for a long time, Christian. Mm-hmm. You and I know that.
Yeah.
But it's come to the forefront. Coaches make so much money. ADs make so much money. And it's all off the back of athletes. And then the point always had come up was, well, you're receiving a free education. Now, a lot of people may not want to hear this, but I thought about this thoroughly before I wanted to write it down or say it. At this stage of the game, having a college degree oftentimes doesn't help as much as it had in the past. And a lot of people are very successful without degrees. So if you can be compensated for what you've been doing or what you've done, I think it's only fair that it be done.
Should be interesting to see with all of that and how it makes things happen. So I guess kind of one of the other questions I have for you in regards to that, where do you think this, because to me this opens up Pandora's box, and I would love for you and I to have a huge, long, 45-minute debate, but we don't have time. For that. But
no, let's get it, brother.
But for me, when you look at it, and let's take this for example, we'll go back and we'll be selfish here and talk about something you and I both know, and that is Manhattan athletics, the Manhattan Jaspers. So let's go back a couple of years ago. Emmy Andahar for the Manhattan Jaspers men's basketball team. If this was allowed and around a couple of years ago, Emmy, arguably the most valuable player of that Jaspers team that went back-to-back, only being a sophomore. But then you look at, let's say, maybe a Allison Skreck, who was the senior point guard on the women's basketball side of things. The opportunities aren't exactly equal there for those two to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. To me, it just changes so much of it, and it really kind of almost maybe even opens up a Title IX issue as to maybe having those opportunities for both male, female athletes, and then even taking it further to the softball, lacrosse, baseball, swimming sports as well.
Well, it can get very tricky when you look at it that way, Christian, but I think a lot of people are much brighter than myself who can understand different ways for the athlete to benefit. Now, you take a situation that you just brought up. If Emmy and Allison possibly work together, could they still be compensated as a team? Mm-hmm. We said, listen, we'll go sign some cards together, or we'll go put our jerseys together. I think a lot of different arrangements will be made where if it's not just one player or person by themselves, how about a group setting? Can I put my partner here with me? Can I have my teammate work with me so we both can receive something? So I think it's a lot of ways and a lot of different areas where it has to be addressed. So right now it's so vague, I don't think they can really do anything just yet.
Be very interested to see how this plays out over the next couple of years. So, Smooth, give us here real quick before we close things up, as we're talking about college basketball here, the season starting in just a little bit. If I give you your chance, your way too early predictions here, though, for your final four coming up here, the teams that you think will be ultimately duking it out for the national championship.
Oh, that's a tough one, but I'm going to give it to you, Christian, because you asked for it, buddy. I'm going to go with Michigan State. I think their firepower is good. I think they progressively get better as the season goes along, and I think they'll be there at the end. Tom Izzo is just a terrific coach, and I believe in him. Definitely, I'd like to see Kansas. I think Kansas, a year in and year out, they'll give you a fluke performance in the tournament. I think this is their year. I think Coach Self is determined to have his team play well with the allegations swirling around the program. I think he's on a mission and have these guys driven to play very well. So I look for them to be in the Final Four. Also toss out, since I'm here in the sunny state of Florida where I reside, and you know what I have to say, the two best words in sports, Christian, are today. Game 7. Not a huge baseball fan, but two best words in sports. I'm in West Palm Beach, and these two teams, their spring training facility is right around the corner from where I live. So Uncle Smoothie works out with the Nationals and the Astros work out. You know the positive energy is down here. So I just had to mention that. So I'm going to toss Florida in that group also. I think defensively they're very good. I think offensively they'll be much better this season, so I look for that. And my last team, not quite possibly sure, I'm going to throw Louisville out there for you.
Okay.
Louisville Cardinals. I think you mentioned Coach Chris Mack doing a tremendous job. I like what he brings back. So those are my four teams. But I have to give a shout-out to a couple of teams and players, if you don't mind, Christian.
Yeah, of course.
Dark horse on the mid-major level, Harvard. I like their team. Bryce Aiken, tough point guard. I think he'll be a pro when it's all said and done. keep your eye on them. The Dayton Flyers, they have a pro and Obi, big fella, redshirt sophomore, can do a little bit of everything. Just needs to toughen up a little bit. And I got to give a shout out. I'm not sure if this team will be in a tournament. My man, Aaron McKee, Philly product, first-year head coach at Temple, looking for him to do some big things before it's all said and done.
He's Chris Williams, one of our favorites to talk college basketball with. You can find him on social media as well. Just search for Chris Williams. He's an author, he's an analyst, and he's also just a lot of fun. And by the way, for those of you who were keeping score, it was March 19th, 1992, Tony Bennett's last game as a collegiate athlete at Dratty Gymnasium when Chris Williams and the Manhattan Jaspers defeated University of Wisconsin Green Bay 67-65 in that one. So
Sounds good. Sounds good.
We always appreciate the time, Smooth, and as always, love having you on the show. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, that's Chris Williams. Again, you can catch him on Twitter at Chris Williams. He's one of our favorites to talk college basketball with. And again, like I said, I have no idea where this is going to go with NCAA stuff, but it's just opening Pandora's box. Is it good for the ones who are going to make the money? Yes, it's great. But there are still too many unknowns for us to really think that this is going to solve, honestly, anything. One thing we are going to try to solve, it's your listener questions. They're coming up next here on Press Row, broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
This is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Confessions of a Military Spouse, where we dig deep and talk about the unspoken hard truths of what it's really like to be a military spouse. A new show comes out bi-weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Confessions of a Military Spouse. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Listen to every episode and get the latest shows sent right to you. Subscribe to Press Row on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, and Stitcher.com. Or visit us online at www.thephmedia.com. This is Press Row with Christian Heimel, a Public House Media podcast.
Welcome back on Press Row. Chris Heimel here with you as we wrap up shop on this Halloween, October 31st, 2019. Get to your listener questions as we do every single week. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at PressRowPHM. You can email the show, PressRowPHM@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Press Row Podcast by Public House Media. A bunch of World Series questions here this week. And full disclosure, we're recording the show before the start of Game 7, so we're not going to talk about the winners and all that stuff. We may get to that next week, but a couple of big questions from you guys. First and foremost, we've got Mike asking here, why has the road team dominated the last two World Series? Well, I don't think it's so much the road team. That's all kind of hit or miss, honestly, based upon how you play throughout the regular season and how your league plays throughout the regular season. What it really is you're looking at the teams with the best pitching over the last 2 years have dominated the World Series. It just so happens that they were the road team in that. You look at last year, 2018, the Boston Red Sox. You look at their starting rotation. Rick Porcello, 17-7. David Price, 16-7. Chris Sale, 12-4 with a 2.11 ERA. Even Eduardo Rodriguez, 13-5. And then Nathan Eovaldi, who pitched brilliantly in that incredible 18-inning affair and really won that series for the Red Sox, was incredible. Craig Kimbrell in the back end. Joe Kelly in the back end. Kimbrell, 42 saves, 2.74 ERA. One of the big reasons the Red Sox struggled this year is because the back end of their bullpen was just absolutely terrible. Compare that to the Dodgers last year in 2018. And Clayton Kershaw, 9-5. Yes, he did have a 2.73 ERA, but he struggled throughout the entire season. Alex Wood, only 9-7. Walker Buehler was great at 8-5, but he was a rookie and didn't really have much of that playoff experience. Rich Hill, their most wins of any pitcher, 11-5. And Kenley Jansen, not a great reliever last year, 1-5 record, 38 saves. He'd blown a few as well. So you really look at it, it's more so about the best pitchers that are going at it. And again, we're talking about four of the best pitchers we have ever seen in the World Series here, and that is Garrett Cole, Steven Strasburg, Justin Verlander, and Max Scherzer. And what you're seeing is the team that actually does have probably the better pitching, even though we don't talk about them, in the Washington Nationals dominating this. Yes, the Houston Astros, Justin Verlander is a Hall of Famer, no doubt, walking Hall of Famer. However, 0-6 all-time in the World Series is Justin Verlander, despite going 21-6 this year in the regular season. Garrett Cole, 20-5. He has pitched great, but he has been matched up toe-to-toe perfectly with these Washington Nationals, aside from Game 5, where he got some great run support in that one as well. But Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer have been lights out here in the postseason. Two of the better pitchers. Strasburg, who came out and started his career on fire, had some injuries where they were toured around with his innings works and all that stuff. But he has come back stronger than ever this year, and he has been just absolutely dominant. And then you got a 3-time Cy Young Award winner in Max Scherzer. So I don't know if it's necessarily the road team. I don't think it has anything to do with it. I think it's the fact that these two teams, in terms of the Red Sox and the Nationals and really even the Astros, have just seemingly dominated from a pitching perspective more than anything else. And that's what really wins it. Even Sean Doolittle, the Astros don't have a great back end. Yes, Robert Ozuna. Yes, Joe Smith. Yes, Brad Peacock. But they don't have the lockdown guys that they did in 2017. Meanwhile, the Nationals, Sean Doolittle has been absolutely lights out for the last couple of years, and he is a tremendous asset to this Washington Nationals team. And I think that's one of the big reasons why you're seeing the road teams dominate, because just the pitching so happens to be with the better matchups on the road. Not to mention, as much as people say it, you can talk about it all you want, that there's more pressure when you're on the road to try to do. There's more pressure when you're at home to perform in front of your home fans. There's a lot more pressure on that side of things too. So I don't think you should leave that aspect out of it as well. All right, here we go. Joe asking about the interference, Trey Turner interference in Game 6, and then, of course, the strike zones in Game 5. Is it time now for robot umpires to enter Major League Baseball? Look, I tweeted this out, actually, on Wednesday morning after Game 6. 3 things with regards to this. Number 1, it's a judgment call. You can't argue with a robot once he makes a judgment call, and unless you're going to actually truly define the entire rules and change the entire complexity of the game the whole way through, a robot umpire to control everything is never going to happen. It's an embarrassment to even think about that. Number 2, with regards to the strike zone stuff, the technology you see on TV is not the same technology that's actually in the ballpark. It doesn't always work out that way. There are a number of articles written about what the Atlantic League did this year with automated balls and strikes. It definitely needs some tweaking. It can get to a point there, but do not rush this. You do not want to rush this. And that was my third thing. Be careful what you wish for. Because as soon as we go there, there is no turning back. As soon as we bring in automated ball strikes or robo-umpires into Major League Baseball, there is no turning back. So be careful what you wish for. That is a huge, huge thing that you guys need to understand and realize that. Don't get me wrong. Some of these calls are bad and they're awful, but it's not every single play. It's not enough where it requires us. We have this tendency to overreact, much like we did last year after the missed defensive pass interference in the Saints game in the NFC playoffs. We immediately decide, we're going to start making pass interference reviewable. Well, guess what? Pass interference is a judgment call by nature, and nobody's going to overrule a judgment call and show up one of their own guys. They're going to stand by their guys, and that's the same way across baseball, basketball, hockey, anywhere. No umpire, no official is going to show up his own guy, his own teammate in that sense, just to prove a point and try to make it better for us. So be careful what you wish for. Last one here, and this is probably one of my favorite ones. Let's see. Sean asking about Juan Soto and Alex Bregman in Game 6 and carrying the bats to first base. Do you think Alex Bregman needed to apologize? Absolutely not. I thought it was amazing. I loved it. And I'm one of the first ones to not be too great about bat flips. I thought what Jose Bautista did in 2015, literally throwing the bat halfway across Canada in a game that really wasn't an elimination game. I understand the moment it was big, but it wasn't a huge thing there. However, what I saw in Game 6 was amazing. Alex Bregman hit an absolute mammoth shot, held the bat as he trotted all the way down to first, handed it to his first base coach, and then ran the bases. That's awesome. Juan Soto then hits an absolute moonshot, probably further than Bregman, and what does he do? The same exact thing, except he tosses the bat towards the Astros dugout right at the end. What did Soto say after the game? He said, I saw him do it, thought it was cool, and I wanted to do that too. The players are having fun, and that is what matters most. If Major League Baseball really wants to survive, and I've said this to countless people, anybody who will listen, Major League Baseball has a marketing problem more than anything else. The young stars of the game don't get the opportunity to showcase themselves to the next generation. Javi Baez, when he dyed his hair yellow, you know how many kids started playing baseball, started to dye their hair yellow because of Javi Baez? You know how many kids started to try after the World Baseball Classic where he didn't even look to catch the ball and Yadier Molina threw out a guy right to Javi Baez? You know how many kids started pointing at their catcher when they started doing that? That's going to grow the game of baseball because that keeps them interested. You have to let these players have personality. You have to let them interact with one another. And yeah, you get a guy thrown at every now and again. Okay, fine. Keep the order of the piece. With baseball's unwritten rules. But Alex Bregman should not have had to apologize for that. I hate the fact that he got bullied into that, probably by his front office, who that's a whole nother issue in Houston that we don't have time for today. But I loved it. I want to see more of it, and I want to see these players having fun and interacting with one another. And I sincerely hope that next year we see more stuff like this. Because, listen, it doesn't impact the game that much. It really doesn't. It's in the World Series. It's on the grandest stage of all, and it's an opportunity for these young players. Juan Soto just turned 21 like a week ago. Let the kids play. You've got so many tremendous young stars. Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, George Springer, Juan Soto, Trey Turner, Victor Robles. The list goes on and on and on. That's just the guys in the World Series right now. Let these kids have fun, and that is what's going to keep baseball alive and thriving here in the United States. That's going to do it for us. We appreciate you guys every single week. Big thanks to Chris Williams for joining us on the show as well. Don't forget to find us wherever you get your podcasts and share, rate, review, and ensure that you guys have a great time here by finding us on social media. And I can't wait to see you next time on Press Row.